Most Wizard 101 beginners waste a ton of time doing the wrong things. But here's what actually matters early game. If you fix your training points, your deck, and how you spend gold early, the game becomes way easier. First thing I want to talk about is training points. I feel like most players will try to train a bunch of different spells or maybe go into secondary schools, and honestly, fully training to a secondary school, even with the spell weaving stuff now, is not really ideal. So I'm gonna tell you the best spells you can get early game. The first spell you really want to train into is Feint. It's one of the best spells that you're going to use for ever, essentially. Honestly, this one's kind of optional, but another good spell early game is to train into Tower Shield. I'd say this is optional because you can get away with using TC if you want, but if you're struggling to survive early on, it's a great universal shield to use just early on in general. It becomes more redundant later on in the game because then enemies have a lot of pierce and they kind of just pierce right through it. But then depending how you look at it, you know, you have your resist, and then this could like save your actual resist. But early on, you know, I think another good one optionally is Tower Shield. Honestly, another good spell I'd say too is Satyr. So this is another optional one. I don't think it's necessary, but if you are struggling to survive early on, I would recommend just getting it because you can use the school pips as well, the Arch Mastery, to just make it cost 2 pips. And to be honest, by the end of the game, you have such an excess of training points where it doesn't really matter that much. So another great early game spell is Satyr. Now, another good spell that I think is almost mandatory is Reshuffle. And people have different opinions on this because you can also get the TC version, which is only 3 pips. And then you don't waste a training point. But honestly, I think it's worth training for because you get such an abundance of training points later on, it doesn't even matter. And I also like to keep my side deck loaded with treasure card TCs of Monstrous early on, so then I don't have to worry about finding the one reshuffle if I need it. I think another great option that you should definitely be doing for your training points early on is coming to Niles and getting your specific school blade, those Elemental Blade and Spirit Blade. Now, depending on your role, you could always get both and then blade others. I don't really recommend the traps because, I mean, personally, I don't really use traps often, but you know, there are use cases for it, but more often than not, you're going to blade or use Feint. Now, after that, there's really nothing you're going to want to use your training points on until you get to Celestia. At level 50, you unlock the Sun Trainer, and you can start training for your Sun enchants. I don't recommend the Moon School. However, you know, if you want to do it for fun, I would do that later in the game, not early on. You will not be using that regularly. At level 52, you unlock Amplify when you progress through the storyline in Celestia, and that is another good card to train early on. For your Sun enchants, you're going to want to keep your training points and keep training to the next tier of Sun enchant, so it goes up to Epic at 110. And there's also shadow spells you want to train for later on in the game. But yeah, this video is just more focused on the early game right now. Okay, the next thing I want to go over is deck building. Okay, so basically for your deck, you want a small, consistent deck so you can always get the cards you need to finish the fight early on. Because essentially, the way the game goes is you're going to want to blade, and then AoE, or blade, enchant, AoE, you know, just that kind of formula to kill mobs off really quickly. Now, you can actually click cards down here to disable them. Now, early on, there's a lot of weaknesses. So I would keep a couple wand hits unchecked to use those. If you have any pet spells you don't want to use or unnecessary item spells, you can just click those off. Ideally, you only need a couple cards early on before you even get your AoE. You can, you know, fill it out a little bit more to have more variety. Once you get your AoE, it becomes blade and AoE, and then you can have enchants to help finish your fight early as well. I always recommend keeping one reshuffle in your deck at the minimum, just in case you do run out of cards, or keeping a couple attacks in there, at least 2. You don't need to do necessarily 1 in case you're worried you won't kill them right away and you need to attack twice, but generally you're going to want to finish the fight after your attack. Now for bosses, it's a little bit different. You can put a little bit more cards in there dependent on what you're doing. I like to just add a couple more attacks in case I don't kill right away. I have a single hit in case I killed the minion first. Feint always. I added the Spirit Blade because in your mob deck it actually takes 1 pip, I realized, and you could just use your pet blade and your main blade, and they're both 0 pips to get to your AoE faster. I have a couple heals just in case you need them, and then I keep a berserk in there. I don't think that's necessary for the mobs. If you want to do extra damage for the boss, then yeah. The next thing I want to briefly touch on is gold. So you won't really have a lot of gold early on, so don't waste it. And essentially all the gear you get, don't quick sell it either. Come to the bazaar and sell it here because it sells for more. I wouldn't really recommend buying gear as well until later levels because sometimes bazaar gear is good. You could just get gear from drops, and then around, you know, later in the game you can use some bazaar gear that is better, especially when you have an excess of gold and you have everything you need bought already. You can just, you know, kind of spend it on whatever you want. If you're not trying to spend money in the game as well, the top things I would recommend buying first are come to the crown shop. You want to go to mounts and look for the broom, and console has 1 free mount you can get for gold, which is 50,000 gold. So honestly, if you want a permanent mount and you don't want to spend money, this is one way to get one early on. There's definitely other ways to get them later as well. The extra movement speed saves you a ton of time questing. It's great. The other thing you spend your gold on is houses. Now you can actually buy all the houses in here for gold. The one I recommend personally is a Red Barn Farm. It gives your plants a gardening buff to grow quicker. The next thing I want to briefly touch on is pets. So if you come over here, once you get an adult pet, you come to the hatching kiosk, then really you just want to look for a pet that has a blade for your school. Now I've been through every pet before. You can check out the video here, and that will go into more detail on what pet you should get for for your school. But I would not worry about stats early on at all. I would essentially just look for a pet that has a blade. That's going to be your best help early on, is that extra pet blade for extra damage. And then after that, I would recommend also finding a pet that has a AoE. And speaking of AoEs, they're one of your best spells you can get early on, so don't sleep on them. It's definitely the type of spells you want to use. And some schools don't get an early AoE. Talking about life and death, they don't get theirs until level 48. Forest Lord and Scarecrow. So you're gonna want to train a pet or do another method to get an AoE early on. Now let's talk about side quests. So for side quests, you don't necessarily have to do them. However, there are definitely ones you want to do. For example, Prospector Zeke, if you come over here, he has a side quest in every world that will allow you to get an extra training point if you find the hidden creatures in each world. The other side quests you're going to want to do are definitely your spell quests. So occasionally your teacher will summon you. Usually it's around on the 8th level. So like level 8, level 18, level 28, level 38, and level 48. And sometimes in between, you're going to want to do your side quests for those certain spells that you'll get. Now on the topic of side content, Grizzleheim is definitely something you want to do. Now I would not recommend doing it when you can right away. I'd recommend just finishing Dragonspire and then coming here, doing Grizzleheim. Should take you 4 hours, and then you'll go to Wintertusk. And now the good thing about this is Wintertusk will help you level up more, so you can be more properly leveled for Celestia, and you'll get closer to level 50 or at level 50, maybe more, depending on how many side quests you have done throughout the game. And it will allow you to get hidden spells from Eric. At level 35, he does a hidden school spell for you and a quest line you have to follow. And then at level 55 in Wintertusk, you get another spell as well. And this will allow you to get future hidden quests in the later worlds, because they're prerequisites. Now finally, I want to end off on something else that is definitely slept on, and I used to sleep on, is the daily assignments. So if you come up here, you can come over here and it'll show you daily assignments you can do. The way you start them, if you haven't done it before, is you come to the Ravenwood, you go to Aegon. He will send you on a quest to get a badge that allows you to do dailies, and then on the 15th day you get a guaranteed gold key, which will allow you to do secret bosses in Wizard 101. If you follow these, early game becomes way easier. If you want more tips and I did help you a little bit, or you enjoyed the video, please drop a like, subscribe, comment, and thank you so much for watching.